Hello and welcome to Superior Data Solutions webinar today. We're going to be covering phishing and a few things about the dark web. My name is Brandon with Superior Data Solutions. I've been in the IT industry for going on over 20 years now. So we'll just jump right in. This slide pretty much illustrates most people's approach to cybersecurity today. Um, just burying your head in the sand isn't going to get the job done anymore. So people have to really rethink how they're taking their cybersecurity for their company and navigating it into the future and not just kind of waiting for things to happen to them. So we'll just go ahead and dive right in. Today's goals are getting some education and discovering where your business is today with cybersecurity and training. Having the tools nowadays is not enough. Training is a huge component of what cybersecurity means to your company. So the first part of this webinar we're going to go over is 5 simple ways to avoid phishing attacks. And some of these you might know and others might come as a surprise. So this is just an illustration is if you ever have a gut feel that something doesn't look right on an email, it's probably a phishing attack. And whenever there's a doubt, always confirm where the email came from, if the person meant to send it to you, even if it's a known person or someone in your company. Just make a quick call. Hey, did you send me this email? Especially if it's asking for information or things that seem out of the blue or just kind of weird requests for information. So the first one is see who the real sender is, and that's very simple. You can hover over the name, the from. So typically, if you're going to have it, like if it's from our domain, it would see at yourdatatech.com. Always have the at symbol, yourdatatech.com. Now, a typical phishing would say at yourdatatech.malicioussoftware.com. So it's anything after the last dot would be the actual domain. So it could say training.yourdatatech.com. Yourdatatech.com is the domain. So that's your first thing. And you really need to make sure that if it says, what you see here, that it's an actual A, it's an actual M, A, an L, not a 1, and all the way through that it's the actual domain that you should be getting an email from. The second one is check your salutations. It shouldn't be dear customer. It should be specifically to you. Not just a random salutation where it's like dear customer or um, it doesn't have your name in it. Something that would indicate that it's that they actually know who you are. And if there are hyperlinks in the email, you want to hover your mouse over the hyperlink to see where that is actually taking you. Anything that's a hyperlink is going to take you to the internet or take you to a website. So if you hover your mouse over it, it'll give you the actual URL or website address that it's going to take you to. And the best method to visit a website that you get an email from is go actually visit the website directly from the internet. So if you're getting something from UPS or Bank of America or whatever, just go right to the website. Close the email, go right into, Bank of America, log in, and you should have those same alerts that were sent to you in an email. Going directly out of the email is a lot more dangerous because you're not 100% where it's going to take you. So it's always best to go directly to the website. The fourth one is the footer. Um, you should always be able to see in a legitimate email. They should have the address um, of the corporation. There should be a way to opt out, um, and you should be able to match those things to an actual thing. If it, has nothing, there's no footer at all, or no um, email with a address and unsubscribe, especially if it's a bulk email. If it's a one-off email, like I'm sending something to somebody, you might not see these things. But in a bulk email where it's asking you or coming directly from like a computer and not a person, you should see these things in there. um, and if there's ever any doubt at all, you can I would always delete it first and just ask them to resend it. Call them up. Have go log directly into the website. Don't take the chance of deleting or opening an email and doing something that could potentially cause damage to the computer, the network, and compromise the security when you're not 100% sure it's a legitimate email. Those are real basic things that you can do for phishing. The phishing component of this, why it's so important to be diligent with phishing, is really the dark web. Um, the dark web is where all this information that's gained from phishing is how they monetize that phishing campaign. So the dark web is where all that stuff is sold. It's where the information is maybe used to hack. It's where everything takes place, and that's how everything is monetized. So, well, like this is where you have a lot of people pretend like the dark web and cybersecurity doesn't exist. Well, it does, and if you continue to ignore it, there is going to be a mess to clean up, and it's going to be expensive. The reality of the dark web and phishing. Here it shows 81% of hacks are leveraged by stolen or weak passwords. Um, 62% of small to mid-sized businesses don't even have a plan for cybersecurity. They just kind of, like I said, bury their heads in the sand, pretend it doesn't exist. So more than half the companies out there don't even have a plan or policies and procedures in place for cybersecurity. And 60% of businesses will not survive a cybersecurity attack. There's the cybersecurity attacks that, maybe they don't say anything about, but ones that hit the news or ones that are significant where there's significant data loss, you're probably not going to survive it. One, the cost is through the roof. You're going to be looking at a minimum of a year's worth of credit monitoring per incident. So if you have a database of 10,000 people, you're going to spend $30 a month times 10,000. That's just to cover the data. I mean credit monitoring for those clients, not to minus the fines and everything else that go along with it. California, the minimum fine is $100,000 plus credit monitoring per client for a year. Um, so SMB is abbreviated for small to mid business sector, and the small to mid business sector used to be not a very big target because there was really not a lot there, but that's all changed in over the last probably 10 years. Most small to mid-sized businesses now are connected to other small to mid-sized businesses, and those connections are what they're after. So a smaller business may be connected to a bigger business, and that's what allows a breach to occur. Like for example, with Target, they got in through the HVAC. HVAC was a small company. They accessed the HVAC uh, network and then got in through the HVAC system to hack Target. So small businesses now have access to a huge amount of data, and it's very valuable. It's like it shows here, social security, addresses, everything people need to build a file, and that's really what a lot of hackers do nowadays. They build a profile on a person. So you'll have your name, address, everything you need to open credit, do everything you would need to do that you would normally use to open credit for yourself. We kind of just covered this. The security for small to mid-level business is low, and the profitability is very high. And now that the tools are available to hackers, make it very efficient for them to go after small businesses, where before it was only efficient to go after really big businesses because they had all the data and it took a lot of work. Now to hack a small business or even a enterprise business, it's much easier to go after that small business because the security is far less, and then you get access into that bigger business through the small business. Um, Small business or small to mid-sized business, their weaknesses, 71% uh, did not think that their organization would be able to detect a small or detect a sophisticated attack. So what they're saying is most businesses don't think they could even detect a breach if they had one. 82% of the small business say careless employees are the most common cause of attacks, and I will 100% vouch for that. You could have 9 diligent employees and one that is um, less than diligent, and that will cause a security breach. You're only as strong as the weakest link. Um, and 72% discovered they had a significant cybersecurity incident in their organization. So those are pretty big numbers. It's more than half businesses out there. Um, Globally, data breaches are, in 2019 have reached 1 point trillion or one, I'm sorry, $2.1 trillion. Um, and 73% of the population will have at least one credential found in the dark web. So that means out of, 4 people, 3 of the people are going to have a some kind of data breach or compromised credential on the internet. Um, and the average attack for ransomware now is getting to, shows 46,000. I would say it's even higher than that. There have been data breaches all the way up to 100 to 1.5 million. Um, Humans are the key factor in this because typically what happens is if you have a employee for your company, they're going to use their work email address and then probably the same username and password for their personal accounts. So let's say they have a compromise in, let's pick one of these, eBay or Gmail, because they used the company's email address and probably the same password they're using for the company. Now they can get into, you know, possibly your email system, maybe even websites, because if you have like a web-based program and you're using the same username and password that you're using in your personal stuff that's been compromised, they can go and try to access those particular companies. For example, most people's domain, it shows what their business is. If it's an insurance business, construction, whatever the case may be, if it's insurance, you could go in and just start hitting all the carriers with those credentials and then try to get in that way. So that's how they're using this stuff. Um, and like I said, because they're using it across platforms, it just makes it that much more vulnerable, um, from end to end, from their personal use all the way through the business use. Um, One of the things we do at Superior Data Solutions is phishing simulation. So we run campaigns. This is an actual campaign across our database. So we've sent out 100% of the emails. 46% of the business or recipients have opened the email, which isn't that big a deal because they're designed to make you open them. The more scary statistic here is 22% clicked on a link in there. And I'm telling you, some of the links in there literally say malicious training for the URL. So that right there should tell you not to open it. And then 13% of those people submitted data. So that means they've actually submitted whatever was asked of them on that form. So that means 13% of 300 people have actually done that. So that is something to consider across your network. Now we have people that are 100% don't click on anything, and we've had companies that had 100% clicked and filled out information. So it kind of goes both ways, and it's all to do with training. This is just what it would look like. Now this is, I've blocked out the names so you can't see what domains they are, but these are actual reports that we can get of compromised emails and passwords. So it just looks at your domain, it gives us the username, it blocks out the last part of the password, but this at least lets you know it's legitimate if you've used these. That means they're for sale on the internet. So those are things to consider. And the non-disclosed just means that they have not found out where the breach came from, and if it does have the origin that, like this one's Ticket Fly, that means that's where that came from. Um, but I wouldn't be concerned where it came from, the fact that it's there. And then you have the PII hits, which means it's personal information. That actually gathered 6 pieces of personal information: first name, last name, address, telephone number, possibly a social security number. So this is out here. This is a real thing. And this is a report that we ran earlier this year. So um, it's something to take serious and know that that's how they're getting your usernames and passwords.